That's why this bruising shows up roughly once a month. Now, he could still be taking IV diuretics for heart and kidney issues, but the Kashuna angle really makes a lot of sense. So, if Trump gets killed, who takes his place? Vance. My friends, tonight is a night of hope, a celebration of what America once was, and with God's grace, what it will soon be again. Trump's devastating MRI scare has insiders whispering that J.D. Vance is already stepping into the driver's seat way earlier than anyone expected. And if you've been watching the way Trump dodged questions about that MRI, plus the way Vance keeps dropping those "if a terrible tragedy happens" lines, you can feel something shifting behind the scenes. The moment that set everything off was that wild press clip where a reporter asks Trump about the MRI. He snaps back, tells them it was perfect, then compares it to his perfect phone call. Then the reporter asks what part of the body the MRI was even for. And Trump straight up says, "I have no idea, it wasn't the brain." What part of your body was the MRI looking at? I have no idea. It was just an MRI. What part of the body? It wasn't the brain because I took a cognitive test and I aced and I got a perfect mark. That alone tells you this isn't some simple checkup. When a 79-year-old man who's been bruising, limping, randomly swelling, and brushing off all questions suddenly doesn't even know what part of his body was scanned, something's off. And before anyone could even process that clip, reporters pressed him again, and Trump lashed out. He insulted one reporter, then clowned an entire news outlet like he was mad they even brought the MRI up again. If you want to hear about it, or if you want to release it, do you want to have it released? News Nation. Failing news. News Nation is doing a lousy, by the way. Moments like that don't just happen for no reason. When politicians get angry at medical questions, it's usually because somebody behind the curtain is panicking. And that's where J.D. Vance slides in. Because while Trump was melting down in front of cameras, Vance popped up in multiple interviews saying he's ready to step in if a terrible tragedy happens. You're one of the youngest people to ever be second in line. Are you ready to assume the role of commander-in-chief? And why should Americans trust you to lead the country? Well, I've gotten a lot of good-on-the-job training over the last 200 days. At first glance, it sounds like your standard VP talk. But the tone, there was something too confident about it. Like the seat wasn't just next in line, it was being warned. And this is where things start getting uncomfortable, because Vance didn't just say it once. He doubled down again, saying, "If, God forbid, there's a tragedy, I can't think of better on-the-job training than the last 200 days. God forbid there's a terrible tragedy. I can't think of better on-the-job training than what I've gotten over the last 200 days. Pause right here. Most VPs avoid language like that because it sounds like you're planning for the boss to disappear. But Vance keeps talking in ways that make the room go quiet. And every time he does it, Trump looks weaker, more winded, more bruised, more frustrated. Now, before we push forward, here's where things get a little darker. Because it's not just journalists or critics raising eyebrows. Trump's own supporters are starting to say the quiet part out loud. One fan went viral claiming Trump is dying soon and Vance will take over, and that this has been the endgame all along. And as wild as that sounds, this next part is the piece that made me sit up straight. The billionaire donor class allegedly wanted J.D. Vance from day one, not Trump. A viral podcast clip with Nick Fuentes basically accuses the big donors of planning this all along. When Trump is discarded, they'll anoint Vance. He'll pour trillions into their companies. And then once Trump is discarded as a lame duck, they'll anoint Vance, and then he's going to pour all these maybe trillions of dollars in value towards their companies, and they will become the new oligarchs of America. That's the ending. So now you've got Trump acting strange on camera, J.D. Vance speaking like he's already president, donors pointing past Trump, and an MRI that nobody wants to talk about. But it gets even more twisted because Trump's health revelations didn't stop with the MRI. White House Press Secretary Caroline Leavitt released a doctor's letter admitting Trump has chronic venous insufficiency, swelling in his legs, bruising from aspirin use, and that he needed vascular tests, ultrasounds, and an echocardiogram. And while they tried to downplay it, the timing didn't lie. Right after that, Trump was filmed walking like he was struggling, almost dragging one leg. Music, that's when people started saying the transfer of power might already be happening quietly. And J.D. Vance, the guy who was supposed to be in the background, suddenly began speaking like the main character. But here's the part nobody's talking about yet. Some insiders say Trump didn't even choose Vance. He was pushed. And the reason why? Now, here's where things really twist. Because if you talk to people who have been following the internal politics, they'll tell you Trump didn't actually want J.D. Vance as his VP. Not at first. And the moment that rumor really exploded was after Nick Fuentes posted that breakdown claiming Trump was boxed in after the assassination attempt. Trump was forced into picking J.D. Vance. He wants to hit Iran hard and give Israel everything they want. They encouraged Trump to pick Vance. And Vance said the day he was tapped, "We need to bomb Iran." That's not normal chatter. That's the kind of talk you hear when a candidate's inner circle gets hijacked. And before anyone brushes it off, even Trump's own circle slipped up about how intense the backstage pressure was. Donald Trump Jr. basically admitted that he had to fight the billionaire donor class to get Vance the VP slot. I should get a little credit for taking on the billionaire donor class that wanted their puppet VP. You have a JD who, in all fairness, I think I should probably get a little credit for just kind of taking on the billionaire donor class that wanted their puppet VP. Y'all, Don Jr. didn't say the donors were suggesting someone. He said they wanted their puppet. This basically confirms that huge financial players were trying to install someone who would benefit them long term. And Vance fits their wish list perfectly. Young, loyal, predictable, and already leaning toward policies that favor powerful companies. And if you connect this with what happened right after the MRI mess, it starts to feel like people were preparing for Trump to weaken and preparing J.D. Vance to rise. Because Vance didn't stay quiet. He started sounding like a man with a timid. Calls out Democrats for letting their cities rot. Why are Democrat governors angrier about federal law enforcement helping clean up their streets than they are about the fact that those streets need to be cleaned up to begin with? It shows a real sickness in the head. And then he told supporters he'll discuss his 2028 presidential plans directly with Trump like the transition is already mapped out. But what really got my attention was this. Right after Trump's MRI meltdown, Vance increased his media appearances by almost double. He wasn't filling in gaps. He was acting like the administration's primary voice. And he wasn't just defending Trump. He was defending Trump's legacy, almost as if he intends to be the one carrying it forward. But here's where it gets even more suspicious. Every time Vance talks about Trump's health or Trump's future, he pivots into national security. That's exactly what you do if you were preparing people for a sudden transfer of power. And speaking of national security, Trump's enemies are circling, too. Which brings us to the next part. Why Gavin Newsom's attack pushed Vance into full I'm the real leader now mode. Now, this is where J.D. Vance stopped acting like a backup quarterback and started talking like the man holding the nuclear codes. It all popped off when Gavin Newsom went after Trump for what he called an abuse of power during the D.C. takeover. Instead of letting Trump answer it, which normally he would, Vance jumped in like it was his responsibility, not Trump's. And the way he responded, it didn't sound like a VP defending a president. It sounded like a president defending his own record. Vance told the crowd, "How many people are alive today because Trump had the willpower to restore order in the nation's capital? How many people are living and breathing today because Donald Trump had the willpower to say, you know what? We're sick of DC being a home to lawlessness. We're going to bring some public order back to the nation's capital." Trump didn't correct him. He didn't interrupt him. He didn't even look annoyed. He let Vance run the entire moment. And Trump, he never lets anyone share his spotlight unless there's a reason. Right after that event, political analysts caught something new. Vance started handling topics Trump usually controls. Foreign policy, military power, even conflict escalation. And then came the part that made this whole situation feel like a silent transition. Vance suddenly shifted the tone on Iran. He sounded ready to move pieces on a global chessboard. Fuentes referenced this too, saying, "Vance was chosen because he's willing to hit Iran hard and give Israel exactly what they want strategically." That's not VP talk. That's commander-in-chief talk. VPs almost never speak on war decisions unless they've been cleared for it, or unless someone expects they'll be making those calls sooner than later. And again, look at the timing. All of this happened shortly after Trump's MRI freakout, swollen legs reveal, and the viral clip of him struggling to walk. Then the moment that really raised eyebrows, J.D. Vance's schedule changed. More press, more statements, more official duties. He was suddenly speaking for the administration more often than Trump. Which brings me to the moment where it all clicked for a lot of people. Weeks after the MRI clip, J.D. Vance delivered a speech that hit different, like he was rehearsing for the big seat. Before we jump to that, there's one more piece we have to talk about because this is the part that makes the whole silent transition theory explode. Like he already knew exactly what Trump's condition was. Even political fans who never criticized Trump started speculating. One wrote, "Trump will die soon and J.D. Vance will take over and the Palantir takeover will be complete." I'm not saying Trump is dying, but the fact that his own base is saying things like that, that's a sign the energy around him is shifting fast. And while all this was unfolding, Vance didn't slow down. He didn't take a back seat. He didn't act like a VP waiting for directions. He started acting like a president with training wheels. He reached into foreign policy. He checked Democrats in Illinois, California, and Maryland for letting hatred of Trump get in the way of saving their cities. Again, that's presidential posture, not VP rhetoric. And once Vance realized nobody in Trump's circle was stopping him from acting like the top voice, he pushed even harder, which leads to the next escalation. Vance started speaking like a man managing Trump's legacy instead of supporting it. And that's the clearest clue yet that something behind the scenes is shifting. Nobody will say it out loud yet. Not the White House, not the movement, not the donors. But if you've been paying attention, you can feel it. It's subtle, but it's there. So here we are watching history shift in real time. Quietly, slowly, like someone turning down one microphone and turning another one up. And honestly, this might be the beginning of something way bigger than anyone realizes.